The Notre Dame Fighting Irish have their home opener, and it's probably one of the most important home openers they've had in recent memory. Want to find out who the opponent is and what the keys are to possibly jumping back in the hunt for the college football playoff? Stay tuned to find out on Talk Like a Champion. Welcome back, Irish Nation. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this edition of Talk Like a Champion. Of course, I am your host, Mr. CeeLo. And just hope you guys are doing well and we've gotten over the shock and the initial stunning look that we had when we walked into South Beach. Because I'm going to be honest with you, like many of you, I didn't think that we were going to fall at the hands of the Miami Hurricanes. I still think, even to this day, we were a better team. I just think Miami was the better team there. And I kind of felt like we were kind of hamstrung by not only our coaching staff, but even our players. But that's neither here nor there. We have to move on to a top 20 opponents that will be visiting us in our home opener. Now, for the most part, many people, despite what the ESPN analytics say, which say that Notre Dame is a 71% favorite to win this game, I'm going to say, without a doubt, I can almost agree with that. But of course, you guys know, with a show like Talk Like a Champion, I am very biased.
Who cares?
But I am going to go ahead and I'm going to lay down what it looks like for each team. Now, I've done a bad job the last couple of weeks on my other shows doing this, but I'm going to attempt to do a better job. The first thing I want to look at is going to be what happens with Texas A&M when they are on the football field, and that would be defensively. First thing I look at when I see defensively for the A&M Aggies is that you don't have guys like Nick Scorton as well as Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart that are on this defensive front. And I'm going to say that I don't believe this defensive front is as nearly as powerful as they were last year, let alone the type of defensive front that we saw in South Florida. For that reason, I honestly think that we are going to see a lot more of Jeremiah Love. Now, the one thing I'm getting sick of hearing from Notre Dame fans and all these podcasters, why didn't you give Jeremiah Love more carries? I don't understand it. Look, Love didn't have a great game. You know what I'm talking about? He touched the ball 10 times. Guess what? Miami was stopping him. Look, let me get this through all of your heads. He's only considered the number one back in the country. Ain't nobody going to be surprised if he's piling it up. This is what Mike Denbrock's got to understand. I got to figure out other ways to utilize him when he doesn't have the ball. Put him on the field and let him run some option routes like he did. Also, play action. Throw the ball out of play action. That would have been the only way. I get it. You were terrified of guys like Bain at Miami. But look, you can't go away from trying to slip up a defense that is already one of the best. And I'm referring to that defensive front from Miami. Now, here's the thing. The weaknesses I saw in Miami are some of the same weaknesses I see in A&M. They're secondary, not crisp tacklers. This secondary is not very good tackling the ball. This is something that Denbrock's got to figure out, how to get his guys like Jaden Greathouse. There's no reason, and I'm sick and tired of hearing other daggum analysts saying that the receivers got to get open. No, Denbrock's got to get them open. You can't sit here and run a whole bunch of dummy routes and only have one route tree in there that works. Stupid. Basically what it means is every other route that you're running out there is to set up that one route. And if the defense reads it, we're screwed. We have got to allow certain plays to set themselves up. The Tony kid for for Miami, they allowed him to do that. We've got to bring Jaden Greathouse to a point where it's like, hey, look, let's let him make some plays. Listen, I love Carr. I think his grit has shown us a lot. But in a sense, we could take advantage of these Texas A&M defenders. And what I mean by that is, look, they played University of Texas San Antonio, gave up 24 points to them. Utah State. Guys, look, I'm going to say it like this. Everybody's going to say that these teams are inferior opponents. But what I look at is both of these games were in College Station. A lot of people are going to say, oh, well, they got junk touchdowns while the game was over. Well, let's look at that a little bit. When we look here and we see the Roadrunners, McCowan had 121 yards in one game throwing the football, and then you see Barnes for the Aggies have 169 on 15 of 30 with 2 touchdowns. Now, the rushing attack is kind of something to be desired. But then you look on the other side with the Roadrunners. Henry Jr. had 16 carries, 177 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, I'm just going to say this, and I'm going to say this only once. The difference in this game, it was 42-24. Most people won't look at this and say that the difference is that A&M was a better football team. The Roadrunners held on to the football 7 more minutes than the Aggies. The difference in this game, to me, was the big play. And now, I'll give it. Concepcion, they've got a guy named Concepcion and Craver that's got some speed. They've got guys that can get behind you. But here's the thing. We've got guys in that secondary that can cover. And Reed is 22 of 34 in this game with 4 touchdowns, 289. He also had 8 carries for 39 yards. Here's the thing I think that is going to make Chris Ash do something a little different than traditional what Notre Dame wants to do, because Reed will run the football. It's going to be synonymous with what we saw in the Ohio State game when Notre Dame went from playing man coverage to a little bit of zone and confused Will Howard. I think ultimately this is why I think when you have a defense that mixes it up, not when a team comes out there and knows that you're going to play man coverage, especially when you got a guy like Reed who will hurt you. And I was listening to these SEC guys run their mouths about, I think all of them except one picked Texas A&M. Dumb shit. I'm just letting y'all know the SEC is still not giving us the respect they deserve. They think an A&M team that has not went on the road yet is going to walk into South Bend and whoop Notre Dame. Stupid.
Stop the cap.
They've given up 24 and 22 to football teams that ain't Notre Dame.
So?
Yeah. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, we ain't probably seen the best from them. Yeah, and they ain't seen the best at all. And like I said, these guys in the secondary really have not overly been tested. You've got a guy like Howell who had 3 sacks against Utah State, and then you go back to the University, the Texas San Antonio game, and you see Kennedy had a sack for the Aggies. And when we go down and we look at how this game in its totality, I look at it from the standpoint that you've got 554 yards on offense, and you gave up 250 to a Utah State team, and you gave up almost 400 in the opener with Texas San Antonio. Now, I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna mean this from the utmost. We have the athletes from Great House to Malachi. We can make things happen. The thing is, we have to be able to trust what we got at quarterback. CJ Carr is a guy that I trust already. Simply because, and this is something else that I look at and I think about. Maybe we can use CJ Carr a little bit in the running game. The one thing I want to be able to sit and say that CJ Carr needs to understand is that if we have to bring in Kenny Minchie a little bit to loosen up these A&M Aggies, then so be it. All we need to do is win this game. We can't sit here and be worried about Carr's sensibility when we need big plays athletically. The reality of it is, when you do that, you can sit there and say you shake a guy's confidence if you want to, but what you do is you give this defense more to think about. A defense that has really not had anybody to deal with yet. And in my own heart of hearts, I really believe the Aggies have not had anybody to deal with yet. When you got an offense that's got Jeremiah Love, you've got Jadarian Price. This is a guy, I know I've gotten off the defense. This A&M defense has not shown they can tackle. I get it. I do believe a little bit that Denbrock went away from the run a little bit too fast, especially when things were working with Jadarian Price. You didn't even give Aeneas Williams a touch.
Why don't you explain it to me? I'll explain it to you.
I think ultimately when you saw that you were worried about CJ Carr making plays, you have to make it simpler. And what I don't like, guys, is we didn't see enough of this. We need to see some crossers with Faison and Greathouse, especially if it's man coverage. If it's zone, we have to go at these defenders of the Aggies. Especially with Malachi Fields, we got to go. We got guys that can handle it. And then we got to look at the fact that we got Reardon. This is a guy that can do his thing as well. We got to stop worrying about what tomorrow's going to hold if we make a mistake. Look, we made mistakes. We made a deep mistake in the fourth quarter. Look, if that didn't build confidence in us, in the coaching staff, I don't know what is. I have confidence in what we can do against this Aggie defense. I don't think the offensive line can't play. This is the first time last week I can see I didn't have any faith in our offensive line. But you look back at it, was our offensive line really that bad? Based on our standards and what we expect, it was. But then let's take a look at the A&M offense. Marcel Reed is a beast, speed-wise. Not much size-wise. So when we start talking about this kid, he has the ability. I mean, we look at the running game for the Aggies, and it's really non-existent. This kid is 6'1", 185 pounds of lightning. So he's one of those guys we are going to have to get our hands on. We cannot afford to let this to lose this guy. Now, a lot of this has to do with the fact that you got running back Le'Veon Moss, who got hurt in the mid-tier of last season. The 5'11", 210 pound senior, who is absolutely he's a game breaker. He's a guy that can hurt you. He's already got 13 carries, 87 yards on a score. But he is absolutely a dude when you think about what he brings to the run game. And what I see, the secondary being as good as it is, they are going to try to use play action pass on the offense to get us out of sorts. And you're going to see a lot of run read option. You're going to see a ton of that. Because Marcel Reed presents a different element. And I think ultimately when you get a team that loves to do things such as run the football undercover, And that's what I'm referring to, because initially that's what they want to do. I don't care how many yards Reed threw for. Many people have still continuously said they don't trust his arm. I don't trust his arm, but I tell you what, I trust my defenders in this game, because there's a lot of these guys that they're going to look at this game like a Don Shula. And look, I don't blame him for that touchdown, that incredible touchdown catch made in Miami. That was just one heck of a grab, because he was in a no-win situation, because if he lights him up, so, and I know a lot of you said he could have got his hand on the ball, possibly, but who in their right mind would have thought he was even going to get a paw on that, let alone catch it? So, in a sense, I look at it from the standpoint, Le'Veon Moss is going to be the big deal that we got to worry about. We have to slow them down. And the Aggies' offensive line, there's been a lot of talk about what they can do, but just judging by what I've seen early on in this offense, I'm not overly impressed with what I'm seeing in the run game for the Aggies. They've had some good splits at times, but when you go down and you look at the entire log of what you're seeing in these games, you'll take, for instance, the Utah State game. You look at the rushing attack, and it's 45 carries, 235 yards. Okay, I can see that. Le'Veon Moss, but then you add in Marcel Reed, 10 carries for 66 yards. Reuben Owens, 40. Morrow for 32, 25. But for the most part, you're looking at a guy in, so to speak, Marcel Reed is the guy that makes a lot of this go. And then you see how this offense really works through Marcel Reed, and how he makes this offense go with the run read option. So, as I said, when a lot of people will say, "Oh, you stupid, they ran for 235." I'm not impressed when you can run for 235 on a team like that. I'm more impressed when you can do it against a formidable opponent. That is what impresses me. Not sitting here running up on a Utah State team, and then it's in your building too. So, yeah. As I said, they only ran for 108 yards against against Texas San Antonio. So a little bit concerned there. I know people are going to say, well, they probably had a better week. Well, I don't know. We'll have to see. But I do know Notre Dame's front four is going to have to step up, because as now we shift over to the differences of what Notre Dame's defense and offense has to look out for. The number one thing is Marcel Reed for the Irish. They're going to have to make some serious changes as far as the getting pressure with 4. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, I don't understand that either, and I don't. I really don't understand that either. I think ultimately you're going to have to start sending pressure. You cannot afford to continuously allow a 4-man pass rush to slow you down. But that's what it's doing. You're allowing listen, you got one of the best secondaries in the country. Now, if you want to play that 4-man pass rush, at least give them some candy to look at, Chris Ash. At least give them a safety or a couple of linebackers jumping up there, bouncing around. Yeah, at least do that. But please don't sit there and give the offensive line a chance to sit there and set their feet and say, okay, I know he's coming. And the other issue is, you don't need to blitz Marcel Reed. You're going to have to spy this guy. And needless to say, we need a big game out of Young. I think ultimately he's going to be a star for us, but we need him to show up right here. We don't need him to show up for the games that are coming up. We're going to need him to really dial in and dial in and get it done. As I said, offensively, if I'm Texas A&M, I'm concerned about your secondary, because you really haven't shown that you can tackle in space. And this has got to be a game where if we can get Jeremiah Love on the perimeter, and the initial thing should be if we can get Jeremiah Love going running the ball. Jadarian Price needs to be in there too. I think there's no way that Jadarian Price should not be toting this thing at least 10 times, unless he has a bad fumble. Needless to say, I think there needs to be the run game needs to be featured in this game. I think ultimately it eases up what what the Texas A&M Aggies can do, and it can also be a huge catalyst for our passing game. C.J. Carr can get some easy looks and even take some shots down to Malachi Fields, which needs to be done. Den Brock, this is not a request. This is a requirement. Malachi Fields needs to get that damn ball down the field. I mean, we saw what he was capable of doing against smaller defenders. This is the problem why you're sitting here recruiting receivers later on and they don't come here. At some point, you got to say, look, we gonna handle this. And throwing it a few times now ain't going to cut it. With that being said, I would like to see at least 4 or 5 shots. And then ultimately, I would love to see at least Jeremiah Love get a throw out in open space, possibly with a bunch of stretch routes, and he get it on an option route, like they do with Christian McCaffrey. To me, that's the best thing you can do, is get him every week acclimated to running an option route and getting him and C.J. Carr on the same page. Because guess what? If he can run away from that linebacker or safety, whoever's covering him, it's going to be huge. Especially if you know they're playing man. That would be massive. If you can get C.J. Carr to say, okay, I see man. Uh-oh. And institute a little bit of Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love at the same time. But ultimately, I see Notre Dame doing some of those things. I see Marcus Freeman getting these guys hummed up and ready to get back into the college football playoff picture. I think A&M is going to find out what it's like to take on the SEC champ. And they are going to fall. And we will win the series, the home and home series, in a sweep. Score? I am going to say 24-13. Let me know what you think. Guys, make sure you comment on the show. If you're new subscribers, please put your name down in the comments. If you don't agree with my take, please say so. If you're A&M fans, please give me a comment down there and tell me why you think it. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of SEC fanboys out there that don't know what they're talking about, don't even watch these teams. They just go by the rankings or they go by what reputation of the conference is. As well as go to the Facebook page at Talk Like a Champion, join the group, as well as like the page. And finally, make sure you go to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo so you can catch up with all the in-game shenanigans that I will be up to. But until the next time, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun rise warm upon your face. May the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.